Don't forget that Entity Framework 4.1 is more than just code first. There's one other very important feature brought to us in Entity Framework 4.1, and that's the DbContext. You've seen me use it throughout this module already. DbContext is essentially a lightweight object context. It exposes the most commonly used coding tasks that developers have used with object context and makes some of those tasks much more accessible. From renaming some methods to make them more logical, for example, using remove to describe removing an entity from the context cache instead of delete, to adding great shortcuts such as the find method, which will execute a query that filters on an entity's identity key. One feature I love is easy access to entities that are already being managed by the context. I'd actually written extension methods to do this myself. Now all you have to do is use the local property to be sure that EF looks in memory, not in the database, for existing entities. That way you can avoid hitting the database accidentally. There are also simpler state management methods, much simpler access to the change tracking info, and there's great extensibility points for doing more complex validations without having to rely on calling save changes. While you've seen me use the DbContext with code first classes, you can also use them with an existing physical model and EDMX, thanks to a new T4 template that's included in Entity Framework 4.1. Here's an entity data model I created the old-fashioned way by reverse engineering an existing database into an entity data model. There's a new code generation template that was added with Entity Framework 4.1, and that's the ADO.NET DbContext generator. If I use that to generate classes from the model, it will create a DbContext and the individual domain classes for me. Here's the context template that wizard added, and here's the class that was generated from it. And you can see it inherits from DbContext, and it creates DB sets, which are from Entity Framework 4.1. And if we look at the other template that was added, that's the one that creates the classes. And here's an example of one of the classes. Very, very simple. It doesn't inherit from entity object, and it doesn't have all the extra logic that the other templates create when you generate classes from them. So this way, if you prefer to work with a physical model, for example, when you're reverse engineering a database, or you just want to design a model on a designer surface, you can still get the benefit of using the lighter weight DbContext and simpler POGO classes, thanks to the new T4 template.